when there's this tension between brain drain and brain gain, we really want to know, is this kind of outmigration a good thing for India or not, right? Because policymakers are always concerned about the fact that, so for instance, in India's case, they're concerned that, the smartest workers are leaving India, right? But what we actually see is that the brain gain effect is much larger than the brain drain effect. So for every 10 new engineers that are going to engineering school with the prospect of migrating, only one of them actually migrates to the US. But as a result of that, India now has 9 new engineers, right? And so in the long run, what happened was India actually gained from these patterns, and that's how the tech sector developed in India. And the tech sector really took off, and it was the fastest growing sector in India. It was what basically drove all of India's export growth for a long time, right? IT services essentially, right? So India gained a lot from this kind of migration pattern. So even though policymakers were worried about brain drain, what ended up happening was the brain gain was really what helped at least the urban Indian economy, really take off in many ways. One thing we did was we got so we're studying high-skilled migrants, so we got all this data from LinkedIn, so which actually tracks a lot of people's life histories in many ways, tells us where they went to college, and then it tells us the entire job history. And the other thing we had to do was we had to digitize essentially enrollment records for higher education institutions in India, especially engineering colleges, because we wanted to see, well, when did the growth in engineering happen and how that kind of correlated with changes in US migration policy, right? So this data exists, except it's all in books. So we had to kind of scan these books, convert them into tables, create a data set, and that's what really allowed us to do the study. So we're looking at, studying international students. So we see a lot of international students coming from countries like India going to the US. And then a lot of them then stay on and work in these high-tech sectors in technology sectors and pharmaceuticals. And so thinking of what role universities play in kind of this pathway, and then again thinking about similar questions of, okay, then do they go back to India, and how does that help develop the Indian economy more broadly, right? So thinking about the higher education sector almost as a conduit for workers, but also how kind of international student migration kind of has big impacts on the higher education sector.